Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
So I'm in here today in our recording lounge.
What a cool word. We're in a recording lounge.
Yeah, I made that up. But
It sounds schmancy.
does sound schmancy. And I'm just enjoying playing my video game.
Yeah, because I'm the best wife ever.
So
And I got you a Pac-Man.
arcade machine, which I went and I modded it so it has like 3,000 games in it. And I added way more money to it than what it probably originally cost.
Yes, because it was at a Costco thing. It was very cheap. It's like not even real wood. It's not even made out of. It's like the fake plasticky wood.
And she comes in and starts harassing me while she's on Instagram, and I'm like, I don't understand why I'm getting in trouble right now. Why you think I should be recording? You're the reason I'm playing this. You bought this for me.
You're the reason. You're the reason.
This is your fault.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm sure some of you
I was
will
not
have seen it.
harassing you. I just thought, oh, it's time to record now. Are you ready?
You're like, what are you doing? And
What
she
you
comes in with her video,
doing?
catching me off guard. And all I want to do is just play my game and be left alone.
Well, I'll happily leave you alone right now.
No, don't leave me. I don't want to be alone. Recently, Abby and I were hanging out, and
I do not know where this is going.
she looked very homeless in nature. And that is something that historically has happened. But recently, she looked especially more homeless than ever before.
I was wearing very baggy pajama pants and a ginormous jacket.
And it was like literally, you looked verbatim like the little 23-year-old that I met so many years ago.
You got so swoony.
I did. It's funny because I remember back when I met you, I was like, I bet she's sexy somewhere under that. There's a hot body hiding in
Let's hope.
whatever she's swimming in there.
That's true. I used to show up with ginormous pajamas. I lived in LA.
Right.
I laugh at how I showed up in LA. People think ooh, fashion industry LA. I went and lived in my pajamas. Not even cute pajamas.
No, but there's something adorable about you. You look like a little kid
I know I did.
then, and you look like one now.
Aww.
When you're in it, and when you were like wearing them and you showed up from your trip and you got out and I saw you, I was like, you look so cute as a homeless woman. I love how beautiful you look.
That's so cute.
Which most husbands wouldn't put up for it. They would have left
Justin. They would have left you. If you're just now joining us, we have
for the very first time.
Yeah, we have a very sarcastic sense of humor in our marriage, and it only works because there's no truth to it.
Yeah. You can give all the disclaimers you want. Someone's going to get triggered and be like, why would you joke like that?
We really do have that all the time. Yeah, we have people, not all the time, but we have people sometimes who will write in who will be like, I know that you guys think it's funny, but it hurts my feelings. I'm like, oh,
I hope you get
I bet
healing
you have
for
a
that.
lot of pain in there. Yeah, I'm so sorry, but we're going to enjoy our lives.
Just as we are,
Yeah.
who we are. There's another podcast you can listen to if you don't like it.
Yeah.
So moving forward today.
That sounds so mean.
Yeah, it's true though. I'm okay with it. I am me. So let's see. What are we talking about?
Oh, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about, governor?
Well, you know what we are going to talk about is we're going to talk about how excited I am that we had so many people who signed up for Living Fully Alive last year sign up for it again this year. We ended up doing a refresher coupon for them. So they could do it at a discounted rate. We did not expect how many of them
Probably
had already
50% of last year people came back maybe.
had signed up full price to do it again.
Yeah, so we gave them a refresher discount and gave them some money back for that.
Yeah, which I honestly, nothing has made me happier because to hear stories that it transform people's lives because they're understanding themselves and the people around them, and they're able to love and be loved in ways that they never have, to understand that it's giving friends and family and spouses and fiancés and dating people common language and core value, to see that, and then to see that people want it again.
Yeah.
I literally could cry right now. Oh, I got a little sappy.
She's on her period.
No.
About to start.
No.
So you can go to stonewallconsulting.com and you can sign up. Sign-ups are available until December 31st, at which it's done.
31st.
So if you're saving up some money through Christmas and you want to buy yourself that gift or someone else after, you can do that. Or you can buy somebody the gift of transformation now. And
basically, it's like, I think you're a real hot mess, so I'm going to pay for you to get better.
So please, honey, go do this course.
Parents should legit do this for their kids. Like, here, this will help.
Yeah. We should talk later about this. So today we're going to do a follow-up on our last week's conversation. We started into a dialogue.
A follow-up.
About spiritual leaders. And
dun, dun, dun.
Everybody's had different levels of experiences. Some are really painful. Some are real destructive. Some people feel really powerless in. But we want to help people actually properly place spiritual leaders in their lives.
Yeah.
And then be able to relate well to them, be able to give them grace, but also be able to hold them accountable. And that all comes in becoming a powerful person in ourselves.
Absolutely.
And knowing where to appropriate the authority in our lives and how to appropriate it.
Yeah. And I think everyone, like, maybe not everybody, but for sure me and lots of my clients all have a horror story from a church or business organization of a leader did to all the people under them.
I had somebody have a conversation about the Peace Corps of all things and that how terrible the Peace Corps was and how they'd never touch the Peace Corps again. And it's all because of one singular authority figure inside the Peace Corps that I was like, they don't really represent the entirety of the Peace Corps. It was one person, and I think you might have been a little triggered and maybe you needed to look at that.
But it's a true thing, because anytime people have power or authority over you, they affect you on a deep level. And
short of us being in a wartime situation where you actually have literally someone holding you at gunpoint.
Or living in a country that is much more dictatorship.
Sure. Let's just say that here inside of this country, people really only have as much authority over you as you give them. And even when it comes down to the police, they really only have as much authority as you'll give them. And then they shoot you.
And then they shoot you.
Then they shoot you.
That was so cute.
But realistically, when we're relating to people that have something to speak into our lives, a lot of times we are yielding and giving them access that we have to understand you're giving it to them. Yeah. The minute I decided, like, I just didn't care what other people had to say, in the sense of, just because you have some title over you doesn't mean that you have the authority to tell me
if I'm good or bad.
If I'm good or bad, or what I'm doing is right or wrong. All of a sudden, I got a lot of peace in my life.
Yeah, totally.
And I got to figure out my value system for myself.
So last week the first thing we talked about is how you show up with every authority figure. And this is true with God also, is you put the spiritual leaders, you put your mom and your dad's face on them subconsciously. You're never aware. I never think.
The face, the relationship, the experience you take and you transfer it over, and it's like you're doing business with your parents.
And so some of the good things, like my mom delighted in me, and somehow I took that into spiritual leaders, and I was like, I think they'll delight in me, and they do.
It's true. It's true. You bring that in all those relationships.
And so you can bring in some of the good things, and then you bring in the pain, and you bring in the way I related to my mom, which was like, I don't have needs with you because you are at capacity so much. I brought that into my relationship with leaders. I don't have needs with you. So if you begin to become aware, we talked about this in depth in the last podcast. I would recommend you listen to that before this one, because we're building on that one.
Yep.
But
and then we talked really quickly about demonizing and deifying, not making someone some complete villain, but also not putting them on a giant pedestal.
Yeah.
And the reasons for that and how that's detrimental and anything out of balance. I think one thing with the connected life that is an undercurrent of the conversation that we're having is about a lifestyle of balance. And that's where we can live in deep levels of connection with the people around us, is when we can live in that balanced state.
Absolutely.
And finding that. And so today, as we jump from last week's episode, we're diving into talking about a need of self and to be open to learning. And we're going to start there with that.
So you need to have a strong, well, not as strong, because some of you are like, I can't do that. You need to have a sense of self.
And describe that.
So a sense of self is like, I know my personality. I know who I am.
I know my value system.
Tendencies. I know my value systems. So I know myself, and I'm not, when I'm around a leader, like, so what deferring to a leader means, like, I don't know anything about anything. That's basically how a lot of people posture. You just tell me what to do. You tell me how to act. You tell me what God wants for my life. You tell me who to marry.
What my moral code should be.
Yeah, all of it is, I am deferring solely to you. And that's a very responsibility-free life. It seems easy.
It is, because if it doesn't work out, then you can blame a leader. It's not your fault. Whether that leader is God, the God that you perceive, or whether it's, your parents or whatever. Well, I did what they told me to do. And my life is crappy because of them.
Totally. But so a strong sense of self is like, I believe that some of my opinions are valuable, whether or not they are all confirmed by leaders.
Right.
So if I go up to so here's a great example. We told this story last week about how this couple that was engaged got confronted about, like, has he ever touched your butt? And then they got reamed. This is the silliest story. If you're just now listening, I did have a great reaction last podcast.
So absurd.
But so reamed this couple for the fact that he had touched her butt. And if you have never been a part of a church like that, and you're like, that sounds crazy, that's not every place.
No.
And that's not every person. But yes, a lot of crazy things have been done in the name of God and religions. So all of them, not just Christianity. I think Christians get singled out, like that we're the only religion that has done crazy things in the name of our gods.
It's monstrously horrible. Yeah.
No, the Vikings are a great example.
And they had many a gods.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. But so here is a story about, so that girl, after they both got reamed and it like really devastated them, she told me she was walking behind her roommate a couple months later, and the same leader who had confronted her confronts her roommate and says, hey, has blah, blah, blah grabbed your butt or whatever, which is a weird conversation.
He's getting involved in like what's happening in your guys' physical interactions and your dating process. Right.
And so this is what her roommate said. She said, I'm not going to tell you that. You haven't taken time to sit down with me and check and see how my heart is doing, to see what's going on in my life, to see how my relationship is doing. You don't get to just come and demand a random piece of information without paying the price to spend time to be involved in my world.
Come on, girl.
And the girl that it happened to was like, I literally didn't know that you could do that. I didn't know that you could say, no, I'm not going to tell you this information about me. And we don't want to create a-holes. Like sometimes I hate telling stories because you're like, all of the mean people are going to use this as ammo to be like, screw you, leaders. And all of the nice people won't do it anyway. But the heart is like, no, you can actually, she wasn't being defiant. She actually said she was willing to talk to him about it.
If he wanted to
invest in her world.
Yeah. And actually have true relationship rather than grab some information and tell you how you should live your life.
Yeah. And so that's when I say having a sense of self, that is kind of what I mean. You believe that there is something about you that you know about.
I think I want to add to sense of self. I think sense of self also comes into self-value.
Yeah.
I think it's so key that if I value and love myself, and that's part of that sense of self, there's a sense of confidence that, not that I have confidence. I have a major confidence, I think, at this point in life.
Oh yeah, you do. It's freaking hot.
Yeah, it is. But in that confidence, I don't believe I know everything.
I'm still stuck in that confidence.
Ooh. Who's been locked onto the gaze of my confidence? I don't know what that even means. So, but inside of that, I have this sense of self where I'm like, oh, I have value for me. I have value for my opinions. I have value for the way that I process life. And I don't believe I know everything. So there's this level of humility that says I'm really out to learn and to grow and to get wisdom, but I don't feel paralyzed in fear at making decisions and at pursuing what I feel is my reality or my truth for my life.
Yeah. So we have this idea that you need to have, the balance is having a sense of self and being a learner.
Yeah.
So like so that one extreme is this is who I am, and you can't tell me what to do, and I don't need to listen to you. And everything you say is shaming. And then there's this other side that is like, everything you say I need to do, and everything you say I need to learn. And so the goal is that I'm like, no, I actually believe I have value, but I also know that I have blind spots.
Yeah.
And so I want to learn both of those.
And I think that that's what makes some of the greatest leaders. The greatest leader has a strong sense of self and enough humility inside of that. Because again, true sense of self, I think, will produce humility because you understand what you do know and you understand what you don't know. You're able to go, I'm super blind here and I have understanding in this space. But I think the greatest, most powerful leaders have that balance out really well.
So I'm going to tell a couple stories from my life showing kind of this balance. So the first one is about like having a voice. So I remember I went to a leader years ago, a famous leader who was over my life. And I was telling them that I feel like I need to quit my job because I am struggling with health issues. And they actually love me so much. And I really am thankful for them. And they gave me a ton of time. And so they're not a horrible human.
Yeah. They
were like, actually, we feel like you're gaining so much momentum in your life. And that if you quit, like you'll get forgotten about. Is basically what they said.
It won't work out well for you. Like basically,
there's so many people here that are amazing and talented. If you quit now, I'm afraid you'll get lost in the sea of that. And I believe in you. So I'd like for you to get more momentum was basically the heart of it. And so I walked away and no part of me, like, because I had a sense of self, I knew,
right.
I actually know my body can't keep doing this. I actually know that it's not good for me to take care of other people more than I take care of me in this season. Now, there are some seasons where Justin has pushed me and been like, no, you can do more. Right. Don't just become sick.
Yeah, don't just give into it. In this.
But I knew this is not a season like that. And so one of the things that balances leaders in my life is community.
Yeah.
So I have all these people who are friends, who are peers around me. And all of them are like, no, you can't do this.
We're watching you. We can feel your experience. It's happening.
Yeah. And so there's this ability to balance leaders with people who know you and with your own self. So I think there's like 4 kinds of ways when I give a leader impact. There's 4 different pieces. I am checking in with God, myself, because we have access to God ourselves. We don't have to go through a priest, which is wonderful. Yeah. And so I'm asking, what does he think? And if I feel like he's like, yeah, quit. It doesn't matter how many leaders, how important they are, how significant they are. I'm going to follow that. Now, there's also the voice of my community. And so I have leaders, I have my community, and I have my own self, and I have God. Those are the 4 voices that are influencing my life. And I'm trying to give power to them. So there's been decisions I've made where my community or leaders, like, I actually feel concerned about that. And I have given them.
Like you decided to trust, like, hey, my community, multiple people are like, hey, I feel a lot of concern about this. And in your head, maybe you were in denial. Maybe you just didn't see it. But you didn't necessarily agree, but you were able to go, all right, but I'm going to trust you.
Yeah. Well, we just had somebody come back to you saying we'd given them some input years ago and said, we actually feel like the best thing for you to do would be to live in this place for 1 more year before you leave.
Right.
And they just came back and said, like,
I wish I would have listened. That actually would have been a really great idea. And it was really painful and really difficult. And I didn't, in the back of my head, as a side note, I wasn't like, yeah, you should have listened to me. Why didn't you listen? I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, what did you learn in that journey?
Totally.
And whatever. Right.
It all worked out. So in this story with this leader, I was able to be like, yeah, I just know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And so thank you for your input. Yeah. I'm not trying to be disrespectful by not listening to it, but I actually know that I can't not do this. And then they got on board and they were very encouraging and engaging after that.
As a side note to leaders who may be listening in this process, I know that a lot of influencers do listen. And
yeah, they do.
I've had influencers get really angry when it comes to giving their feedback and people not taking it.
Yep.
Because they're like, oh my God, then why did you ask me if you don't want to utilize what I have? And there's even places historically, long ago for me, where I'd be like, then why are you wasting my time if you're not going to do what I tell you to do?
Right.
And I had to realize like, oh, the point of me speaking into someone's life isn't to give them the right information and get them to utilize it and apply it. It's for me to first and foremost just love them well and be a reflective sounding board to their world and be how do I put it? Like be one of the pieces in their journey. One of the players inside of their journey. And so when I'm joining someone, I'm being fully present with them, joining them on the journey. And that's my role, whether or not they use my information. The information is secondary. I got to love them and be present with them and be part of their process and get closer to them and get to know them more in that. And if that's what it's about, it's really easy. So for leaders out there that have gotten defeated, who have gone like, why won't they listen? You need to begin to go, it's not about them doing what I say, and it's not about me giving them the right information. That's too much pressure for you to give them the right information.
Yes. And something that I would say, like, the way that I can tell you I wasn't in a spiritually abusive situation is that I was able to have a different opinion, and they didn't actually remove love relationship or punish me. And so that's another thing. And I do understand that there's sometimes where there needs to be separation. Like I've had situations before where I was leading where I was like, oh, you actually need to go on your own path. And I don't think you can do that with me here.
Present.
Like I think that you don't know how to find your voice next to me. But that it's not about removing relationship. And for me, there should always be an on-ramp for connection if possible. Yeah. So if a leader is telling you that if you don't do exactly what they say, like the consequences should not be now they don't value you.
Right. They don't love you. They don't want you. I think that there is something to the idea that if someone talks to a leader and is always asking them questions and never utilizing any of the wisdom that's being given, I think it's very on the flip side of that coin, because we're talking about balance and we're talking about two different sides of a coin on this. I think there's appropriate times for a leader to say like, hey, I'm not sure what you want, but it seems like everything is you asking me for input and none of it's being applied. So I don't think I'm fulfilling I'm not necessarily fulfilling the right role in your life.
Right.
And so I'm probably not the person to
for you to come ask
these two.
Yeah.
Because not even 1 out of 10 questions or answers are you applying to your world.
Right.
So
it's okay for leaders to set boundaries.
Set boundaries and be like, I'm going to adjust my posture. So I'm going to listen if you want to verbally process and just listen and love you and tell you I care.
Right.
But I might not actually give input in that way. I'm not going to throw you out, but I'm probably not going to give my input in that way because none of it is utilized whatsoever. I think that that's something key to look at inside of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I thought I'd tell one more story because I have another story where I went to a leader and I was processing. This is years ago. I had 2 life decisions that I was kind of trying to process with them. And I actually love processing decisions with leaders. I do feel, I just want to say this, that there's like a grace in my life when leaders know me. So when I am going through something hard, when my leaders know it, it actually feels like it opens up like grace for my situation. I don't know how to explain it, except it's like a feeling of being like
I'm not alone. I'm cared about. But
even I can feel burdens be lessened when leaders know about my life, or when there's something that I feel like there is a gift of covering, but it's never meant to be used. I don't know how to explain that without it sounding so old-fashioned.
I think I think to me, and the only language I can give, and I'm not in you, but I think
not currently.
Hey-o!
Whoa!
I think it's the idea that there's someone bigger than me.
Yeah.
That has information, and I can actually cares about me, and I can let go of some of my worry even in this, because they have wisdom. And if they really see a blind spot because they have all that information, I'm going to be alerted to it.
Yeah.
So I can settle a little bit in my journey.
And to be honest, I also feel, for me personally, a special grace, Now, if I don't have leaders in my life, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. But when I have leaders in my life, I feel even a special grace with God in a different way. And so I'm just throwing it out there. There's a benefit to having leaders that I have experienced. Mm-hmm. But what I wanted to say is I went to this person with two options. And one of the reasons I like them is they're very non-controlling. So I am aware, like they don't micromanage me.
Yeah.
I have submitted a lot of decisions to them and they ask good questions and they seem really for me, but they never seem like you have to do it this way. A lot of empowerment. And so I came with these two decisions and all of a sudden one of them spoke up and was really opinionated. But for me, it wasn't, again, they were like, I have vision for you. I have vision for this for you. I want to see this happen. And because of that, I walked away like with something that I was leaning against, being like, okay, I'm going to put this back on the table. And so I sat and thought about that decision for another year, processing through it, because I thought it is wisdom to have people who think differently than me, who see me and who have vision for my future.
Yeah.
It's wisdom to listen to voices like that. So I didn't lose sense of self. I wasn't like, oh no, that means everything I've been thinking is wrong. Or like, I'm trying to say like, I could hold on to my sense of self, not feel controlled, but also allow myself to be learning from them without being abused by it.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to give examples because most people don't know that balance of how do I allow feedback in without giving all my power to it? How do I relate with leaders if we disagree? And that's one of the things I love is that I live in a culture where the leaders with me are okay if we disagree.
Yeah. And one of the there's a lot of environments where leaders aren't okay with disagreement. I want to talk about that for a second because there are actually people listening from the get-go of this conversation, not just this episode. I'm talking about last episode, the combination of it all, where there's probably a screaming pain inside of you, where something inside of you is saying, this hurts so bad. You don't know the terrible people that have been around me. It was abusive. And some of you are sitting there thinking of how controlled and how manipulated and how abusive those relationships were. And so I want to take a second. Maybe we can begin a journey of addressing some of that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's worth validating and say there are some leaders who are power hungry.
They are. Who
are abusing people with their authority.
They want to control them. They want them to have to listen to their value systems.
And the truth is, even then, though, it's the little kid inside of them that was bullied that is now bullying.
Yeah.
Even then, it's the little kid in them that has all this pain that they're trying to take out on other people. But we want to actually like validate, like it's some people are actually should not be in leadership.
No,
some
they
people
shouldn't.
should be called on it. And I remember I grew up in a place like that where I had an authority over me that did some really unjust things. And I remember knowing like, you're not supposed to be in leadership and being in the journey with that process of seeing them actually be forced out of leadership, which was good for everyone.
I think there's times to speak up, and I think that there's stages of speaking up with regards to leaders. And I don't know if we want to go into a huge process about that, but I think that investigation is a one step inside of it. When you feel like there's an abusive environment, beginning to ask, hey, help me understand. This is what a lot of us, or at least myself, is experiencing, and I can't talk for other people, but it feels like others may be experiencing this thing.
Yeah, and I think it's important to start with having a conversation with the person and then bringing other people into it, either people on the board or other peers or people that can have a voice with you. Mm-hmm. And then if that becomes a problem, then involving a bunch of other people is, I think, an important way to do it.
Right. And I think that, again, going back to when we started this off with the idea of, do I have mother or father wounds? That actually helps us understand, is there a real concern here? Because the more that I filter whether or not I have mom or dad wounds, if I can get to the end of actually going through a journey in my life of filtering through those, I can have some real clarity. And at this point in my life, a lot of times I can go, no, that's absolute abuse. That's not just me triggering. This person's incredibly controlling and manipulative in their behavior, and I need to have a conversation with them about it.
Leaders should never verbally abuse you. Leaders should never physically abuse you. Leaders should never sexually abuse you. Leaders should never demand that you work for hours for free. Like, not volunteer. Volunteering is like a really fun and empowering thing, but there are people who like overwork people and use them.
Yep. And even use things like God isn't going to approve of you if you don't help out and give to this. And
leaders should not use punishing statements or threaten you to get you to do what they want you to do.
No, leaders shouldn't hide things. They shouldn't. I know one leader in an environment where he was in sexual misconduct with another younger woman. And in that process, he continually told her, hey, we can't tell anyone about the sexual exchanges that we're having. If we do, it's going to lead to the end of my organization. It's going to lead to the end of my relationships with people. And he was incredibly spiritually and emotionally abusive.
Yeah.
And he told it, he said, he told her he loved her. He said, it's because I love this person that I did this. It was incredibly broken. It was incredibly abusive. It was incredibly unsafe. And it was filled with a lot of delusion inside of it. But that hidden thing, like the minute someone comes up and says, hey, we can't tell people about this, they just won't understand what we're up to.
Yeah.
That is complete abuse. And that is a red flag for you to run as fast as you can and to actually start shouting from the mountaintops, hey, he told us we shouldn't talk about this.
Leaders should never ask you to hold their secrets for them.
No.
Yeah. Leaders should not be asking you for money personally.
Absolutely
on the side.
not. Hey, by the way, I know I've been speaking into your life. Could I borrow $10,000?
Totally. Or like if you don't, or leaders shouldn't say like, I've been checking how much you've been giving to the church. That is inappropriate behavior.
Yep. That's spiritual abuse.
Yes. You don't want to have leaders who actually are giving you like you can work your way into an inner circle.
Like Scientology.
Yeah. Like,
hey, if you pay enough, you can be awesome and friends with everybody.
Totally. Yeah. If you pay enough, you get into it. Or if you tithe enough, or if you give enough hours, then you're allowed in. Like, relationship is supposed to be based on relationship, not based on what you can do. Also, leaders should not punish, which means it shouldn't be like, hey, our congregation is going to shun you now.
Oh, yeah. And that as a side note, I saw so many institutions historically that I was part of where if someone didn't follow the rules to the institution, it was at a mass level of people, entire group, we will not talk to that person outside of here until that person gets their life right. As in does what we want and gets in line with our value system.
Yeah.
And so mass shunning.
Mass shunning is, so we're not going to hit all of the.
No, we're just conceptually.
Also hypocrisy. If your leader drinks alcohol, but then demands you don't drink alcohol. Or if your leader sleeps around, but then shames you publicly for sleeping around. Like those kinds of things. I think that's spiritual abuse.
That makes me think of a public leader who ranted pretty hard about...
Ted Haggard. He ranted against homosexuality so hard. And then it turned out he was sleeping with male prostitutes.
In the background. And we bring that up not to even attack Ted in any way, shape, or form. That's
I'm sure his soul was in so much pain.
So much pain. And I know he's been on quite a journey ever since then, and of kind of getting healing inside of his soul for all of it. But when I see people from a public platform so destructively rail against something, that causes me concern.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say like, hey, I feel like there's a disagreement here. You know, if Ted, worst case scenario was like, hey, I don't feel like my value system lines up with homosexuality.
Totally.
Okay. Agree or disagree with Ted, whatever.
Yeah.
But Ted railed against that. And I see people rail against other types of things. And I go, that is shaming. And that is scary. And that's an environment that feels scary.
Yeah. And really, if you are in a shaming environment, now this is complicated because if you feel shame, you could feel shamed by someone who's not shaming you.
Right.
Like I've had people feel shame before when I Like I have a client that will talk to me about something and I'll say, oh yeah, that sounds like you're having a trigger. Well, in her world, triggering is horrible. So me saying that is me shaming her. And I'm like, oh no, in my world, triggering is what everybody does. I do it all the time. And this is how we work through it. So you can feel like the environment's shamey because you're shamey.
Right.
Or you can actually be in a shame environment.
Right. And so those are the questions. Again, investigation is so key. Like
yes.
Going back to, is this something inside of me? Is this actually shame that I feel over my life? Or is this actually an entire environment that's acting in this way? And that's what we have to investigate, seek to understand, and make decisions from that place.
I want to bring up something else. It's not actually spiritual abuse, but I do want to bring it up because it's in the area of relating to leaders, and it feels really important to me. A lot of leaders know, like I know a lot of leaders, spiritual leaders, who are really good at compartmentalizing and shoving things down and being super disciplined. And what I mean by that is like,
I've seen that in the self-help community.
Yeah.
I see big self-help community leaders that are like, just do it, discipline.
Just figure this thing out. Just say this many mantras.
And you'll be fine, like me, because I can do it. Why can't you?
Yeah. And I've seen that with leaders a lot. Like, well, I can just choose not to do that. Like a lot of things in church, I talk about church because that's the world I was from. But so like a lot of leaders would be like, well, just don't look at porn.
Yeah.
And there are leaders that have the capacity to just choose out of discipline.
Right.
But what happens is those leaders don't know how to relate, and so when you're like, I don't know how to do that, it can become shaming, or it can feel like there's no way to become good enough.
Right.
And so there has to be an awareness of not everybody works that way.
Yeah.
Not everybody is super disciplined. There's so many things that your genetics play into it, how you were raised, the trauma you went through, what you learned about things, so much creates who you are that you can't just always do the same path as someone else. And so in order to feel like you have a sense of self around leaders, if you're like, yeah, I may not be able to do things the way they do things, that doesn't mean I'm bad. It's kind of like me with dyslexia. I'm not going to drive straight from here to you, but I'm going to take 20 twisty, windy paths and I'll get there. Right. So like not shaming ourselves or believing we're bad if we don't look like that, and actually learning to spot that. Oh, that's a leader who has the gift of discipline. Right. I think it's a gift, and I think it's wonderful for the people who own it. Right. It just doesn't mean that I have to. I know I have a friend like this. They have the gift of discipline. They can just push through stuff in a different way than I can. And I literally look at their life and I'm like, I couldn't do it. I feel like a failure as a human. And then I'm always like, oh no, that's just not my gift.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I wanted to read this meme real quick, and then we're just going to take a couple minutes and repent to people on behalf of things that they've gone through. Somebody posted this week, and I thought, oh, this is good. It says, this is about Christians specifically. Yeah. As Christians, it should be our obligation to support ex-Christians, religious trauma survivors, and people who were abused by the church. We should be listening to their voices instead of pretending it isn't our problem. And I would say, I don't know that it has to be our problem, but it shouldn't be something we ignore. It shouldn't be that we're afraid that you are no longer a Christian.
No longer part of the social group. Ooh, you're terrible. Where did you go?
It should be that our heart is to love and hear and understand the pain of anyone's story.
One of the things that I have gotten, I actually have a big heart for people in this arena, because I almost put up the middle finger to the entirety of the church and lit it on fire and walked away.
In your heart. Yeah.
Right. And there's a distinction between the church and an institution. The church is actually a gathering of people that love one another, and the institution is just a conglomeration of people trying to follow a bunch of rules and make stuff work. And institutions are institutions. But I've had a lot of really well-known worldwide leaders within the context of Christianity. Their children end up in relationship with me, whether through friendship or in my office. Yeah. And they are shattered.
Oh, yeah.
Just shattered by the experiences that they've had with their parents. And
And sometimes because of their parents being crazy, and sometimes because of what has been done to their parents
inside
leaders.
the institution as leaders. And so you actually have both sides of that coin of where they walked away. And so when I see people who have walked away from what they call Christianity, I don't think anyone really walks away from God. I think they walk away from the version of God that they've experienced, the representation of God that they've had. But when they come into my space, I'm looking going, this isn't about you being bad. This isn't about you failing. This is about you being devastated.
Totally.
And you trying to protect yourself from the devastation. And any place where you had your heart open to this area only made it feel like there was a freeway in for people to drive in and destroy you further. And so I've seen so much reconciliation for those people that have come from those environments, but it came on the terms of me loving them where they're at and me not having an agenda to make them believe something that I believe. It was me actually seeing through their lens.
I want to hear your pain. I want to see what you've gone through. I want to actually tell you that it matters.
Mm-hmm. And it matters more than me correcting your belief system to some belief system or value system that I have.
Yeah.
And I think that far too long people let me back up. Inside of religion, whatever religion you're in, oftentimes the core value is you have the answer.
Yep.
And you have the truth. Mm-hmm. And you need to let everyone else know the truth.
Yeah.
And so the value system from that is not people's hearts.
Right.
It's about people's beliefs. And that's what's really devastating. And that's why people don't have an ability to get resolve in this. People who are outside this, now left this bubble, they don't have an ability to get resolved because the people inside the bubble don't want to meet them where they're at. Mm-hmm. They want to show them how they're in error of their ways.
Wrong.
Yeah. And so we want to address that. And
I do know, like, I have lots of friends who are pastors, and I know it's hard to reject. It feels like rejection. It feels personal to people. Mm-hmm. So that's why they trigger, because they're rejection. Like when people leave church or they leave God with unhealthy boundaries, pastors think this is you leaving me.
And I'll say this, this is going to potentially be taken out of context. Abby might even like fight me on this
Bleep
later
this out.
afterward and be like, you need to cut this out. But I feel like this is essential for me to say. My identity is in the idea that I'm a child of God, not that I'm a Christian.
Right.
Now, when we talk about labeling oneself, people will label themselves as a Broncos fan.
Totally.
That's me. And then when you say, go Saints,
or they're offended.
They're offended because they think that who they are is a Broncos fan.
Right.
For me, I let go of the idea that I am a Christian a long time ago as a label.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
I think this is great. No need to bleep.
Well, because it can stir up a lot for people having a dialogue like this. But I abandoned the idea that I'm a Christian. I have a value system that aligns with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Someone who pointed us towards love, redemption, healing, restoration, right?
And became that for us.
And became that, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, so under the idea that I am a child of God, I'm a son of God. When people say Christians are terrible, shitty people, which there are people that say that.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah.
Some of them are.
Some of them really are in their behavior.
When people tell me churches are the worst and they devastate your life, I'm like, yeah, some of them do.
Because I don't identify as a churchgoer. I don't identify as a Christian. I identify as a child of God. And when my identity or my value system is in that, I can be at peace with people going and navigating their spiritual walk and their life however that they want to do that. And I can be okay with them verbally processing that pain in a way that never feels attacking to me. So I don't feel brutalized by someone saying, I hate Christians. Yeah.
Sometimes I do too.
Sometimes I do too.
Yeah. That's
really difficult. And so that's an invitation for people right now who are listening to this, who do have an identity where their identity or their who they are is sourced in the idea that they are a Christian, to actually begin to readjust that to, no, I'm a child of God. Mm-hmm. And now I can be at peace with people in disagreement with a system or a religion.
Yeah.
Because Christ was never a religion, but we've created religion out of this idea of Jesus.
Yeah.
And created a bunch of rule system.
Yeah. That
oftentimes doesn't align with his nature or his value.
Yeah. So I just want to start by repenting as a spiritual leader on behalf of leaders who have cared more about managing your behavior, who've cared more about controlling you, who cared more about getting you to do something that made them look good, who cared more about what was happening on the outside than getting to know you, than actually understanding you. I want to repent on behalf of every spiritual leader who got offended when you had pain instead of actually sitting with you in the pain. I repent on behalf of every spiritual leader who didn't know what to do with your pain. And so we gave you some crazy advice, like shove it in the corner, just pray more, just read more, just figure it out more. Like, because we didn't know how to actually just sit and be with you. I repent on behalf of every leader who has a bunch of triggers and hasn't known how to take ownership of what their pain is and how their past history is affecting them. I repent on behalf of every leader that didn't. I'm so sorry on behalf of every leader that didn't know how to actually pursue you and get into your world and understand your pain in the process of your heart and what was going on.
I want to say, as some of you are listening to this, who felt really devastated by abuse or devastated by judgment or devastated by being misunderstood, I'm sorry that I failed you. I'm sorry that as an authority figure, I may have betrayed your trust. I'm sorry that I ran over you. I'm sorry that I cared more about rules than connection with your heart. I'm sorry that I put these heavy demands on you to be something that I couldn't even fulfill inside of me. I'm sorry for hypocrisy. And there's places where I was so hypocritical with you.
I'm sorry for where I demanded that you do behavior that I wasn't living up to, where I put expectations on you that actually crushed your soul, where I put expectations that were impossible to fulfill, where I was a hypocrite in what I was demanding from you, but what I was giving, where I lived in secrecy, where I lived as, dealing with the same things I was telling you that you should be able to overcome.
On behalf of leaders, I want to say there was areas where I was at a war with myself, and I projected that war with myself onto you. And I had a war with your questions, and I had a war with your problems with pornography or your problems inside of your marriage. And I wasn't kind and I wasn't gentle and I wasn't patient because I had those same wars inside of myself, and I was fighting my own soul, shaming myself, at war with myself because I wasn't better off, because I didn't believe that I was doing right enough or being good enough as a leader, and I believed that I was failing. So then I took it out on you in the way that I managed you.
I'm so sorry as on behalf of leaders in your life who made really high stakes about things that don't matter. Like, oh, you were late and now you deserve to be punished forever, or you'll never be anything because you've touched somebody's butt. Like, whatever it is, I'm so sorry for where I have disqualified you or made you feel like your whole life would be over because of the mistakes that you made, or made you feel like your mistakes were worse than everybody else's. I'm so sorry for shaming you, for punishing you, for not actually caring for your heart in your mistakes, not drawing near to you and holding you when you were in the most pain and holding you when you were the most broken. I'm so sorry for throwing stones at you instead of being a safe place, a refuge from condemnation.
I'm really sorry for the places where I managed you out of my insecurity, not out of relationship, where I managed you rather than had relationship with you. I'm sorry that I shut down your voice in moments where you tried to confront or talk or be open and honest. I'm sorry that for places where you risked telling me about things that were scary inside of your life or painful inside of your life. And then I actually turned it into a punishing moment where I used it against you. And I said that you're bad and you're failing. And I took away opportunities or chances of growth and development, where I shut down relationship when you were actually risking and being brave in the first place to even come share yourself with me. I'm sorry that I failed you there. I'm sorry that I exposed you. I'm sorry for moments where I took your information and then made a villain out of you when you were actually freely giving it to me, trying to figure out life, and then I exposed it to other people. I'm sorry for standing up in front of 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people, an entire congregation of people, and shaming and condemning you for something that you did when you actually wanted help and health and healing for it.
I'm sorry for shunning you or isolating you. I'm sorry for not representing God well. I'm sorry for acting like I had all of the answers. I'm sorry for acting like I knew everything. I'm sorry for not walking out the consequences of my advice with you.
I'm sorry for the places where I controlled and I manipulated. I'm sorry for places where I used you and I used people around you for my own financial gain, my own purposes to make my life better. And I didn't give back, and I took, and I didn't care. I'm sorry for the places where I actually didn't care about you, and I actually didn't care about people in our environment. And it was all selfish and self-centered in my brokenness.
And I just feel this, I just release healing over every heart that has been damaged, that has watched corruption, that has watched hypocrisy. I just release healing, that you would be able to feel. We just watched Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and I could just feel the presence of love in that movie. And I just release the presence of love, that you would have the grace to be able to let love into the places where pain has kept you imprisoned, that you would be able to have the grace to let go of the people that you are keeping close to you because of your pain with them.
Yeah. I want to say this as well. On behalf of a leader who's a parent, I'm really sorry that I made our family more about a mission than I did about you. That the mission was to build some organization or to build all these other people's lives, but I didn't build your life. I didn't build relationship with you. I'm sorry that I left you feeling so damaged and discarded, and I called it God, and it wasn't. It wasn't at all. God would have really actually been me first and foremost, taking care of this family, investing in the marriage, investing in you kids. I'm sorry for any place that I damaged you. I damaged you in the way that I punished you. I damaged your relationship with your Creator by saying this is God and it was never God, the way that I responded in punishment, in reaction. I'm sorry that I never gave you space to just go on your journey and ask your questions and figure out your own way. And that when you disagreed with me and didn't see things through my lens, that I pulled away, that I disconnected, that I became hard-hearted in the way that I behaved with you. I'm sorry that I judged you because you didn't line up with the rule system that I thought was completely right.
And to leaders out there, I'm so sorry that no one is seeing how much pain you're in. I'm so sorry for all of the places that you've given your best and people always tell you that's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for us demanding from you that you know everything, for us blaming you whenever anything goes wrong, for our ability to turn on you and speak poorly about you
in just a moment's notice
and never actually think that there's a human behind that.
I'm sorry that we haven't believed the best about you. I'm sorry that we haven't investigated your life and wanted to actually be there for you and show up.
I'm sorry for how alone you feel in leadership and how scary it would feel to feel like you have to know everything all the time and like you can't be weak.
Yeah, I'm sorry for how lonely you've been in the process.
And I'm sorry for every place that I've put my triggers on you, where I've put all of my fears, all of my blame, all of my issues about my parents on you. I'm sorry for every place that you've had fear of abandonment or fear of being left behind, and yet we've left you anytime you aren't what we want.
Yeah.
The same way that we feel we want leaders to be able to love people when there's disagreement, people don't love leaders when there's disagreement.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry that we've abandoned you when we've disagreed instead of fighting for relationship through disagreement.
Yeah. I'm sorry for the places where it's felt for you as a leader where you've had to live with your walls up because there's been just a sea of judgment looking back at you. No matter how hard you're trying, you're just feeling the dissatisfaction, the frustration, the judgment, and that at a moment's notice, someone could light fire to your world when you're giving everything you know how. And I want to recognize leaders out there, to so many of you who actually have a genuinely good heart, who are moving towards wanting to do what's right and wanting to love people well. I just want to say, I want to acknowledge you today. I want to say that you're not actually alone, that there is a network of other leaders that are in the same shoes, that are going, oh yeah, I feel alone too. Oh yeah, I haven't known how to have peers and feel safe with people. And I don't know how to fully do this leadership thing because I'm failing forward, because I'm doing it for the first time. And I was never equipped to do this. And we see you and we say, I'm sorry on behalf of people who have been in your environment. I'm sorry for not giving you grace, for not graciously walking by your side, for I'm sorry for giving you too much authority in my life and then hating you for that. Or giving you no authority at all. And
hating you for that.
I'm sorry for the places where you feel damned if you do and damned if you don't in this experience.
I'm sorry for where it feels like there's no win. Yeah. That you'll never actually win. That every week you get hit with more and more criticisms. I'm sorry for the places that I am disappointed in you when you aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And so we just invite love, that leaders would feel permission to be who they are made to be. Leaders would feel permission to be weak. Leaders would feel permission. If you're a leader, get a counselor, get friends that don't go to your church or your religious establishment. Get people in your life that you are just a normal person with. And we just release love and healing to both people who are being led and people who are leading, that we could all actually heal from the wounds from our childhood, that we could all get our needs met, that we could all own. Like, as a leader, I have brought my pain into the relationships with people I have led. And so I repent as a leader for bringing my pain into it. Yeah. And I also repent to leaders for not allowing you to be human.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we hope that your heart has been touched. If you struggle with leaders, the Father Series is a great place to get some wound healing, to like actually find yourself, awareness, your ability to like have value for yourself and get your power back. It's 25% off till Christmas. Justin's book is
also 25% off. But I do want to say something else really quick.
Great.
To you leaders out there, some of you haven't been able to break the seal on this whole thing and actually have a conversation with another leader. And if you need to email us, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to be available to meet with every single leader out there that maybe has some of these things. But if you need to have, at least me personally, I'll speak for me, not Abby. Abby can, but you can email me at justin@stumballconsulting.com. If you just want to unload something off your chest, like, yeah, actually, I'm really sad as a leader. I just wanted to share it with another leader. I've never been able to share something, and you just need to put that out there. I'm not here to fix you. I'm not trying to get a client in my office, nothing like that. I'm just making some space available as someone who just saying, I love you. I know that it can be a really difficult space to be there, and you need someone, because I actually value people's lives who are in a fishbowl.
And if you've gone through spiritual abuse, there's a lot of books about spiritual abuse that probably could feel very validating.
Yep. So if you got touched by anything we shared today, rate, review, subscribe, share to people. And thanks for joining us. Bye now.